And I mean, this felt like a conclusion to the series, or like a good season finale. So it only has to go up from here.
Straight up, after I watched, I couldn't think for like 20 minutes after I watched this episode. I was just like flabbergasted is the only word I could say. Probably the best thing I've seen from Marvel in years too.
Welcome back to the Starfighter Podcast, where we talk everything nerdy, and tonight we're going over episode 4 of Loki. And man, there is a lot to unpack. So to help me out, once again, Jake Hedge. How you doing, bro?
I'm doing good, man. I'm doing good. That was an amazing episode, so I can't wait to break this down.
So incredible. Yeah. So before we get into it, guys, if you're not already, hit that subscribe button for us. It's really just a follow button. So, whatever with this whole YouTube terminology, but hit that button for us. Leave us a like, leave us a comment. Also, you can download our episodes for our podcast on the podcast feed, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. That helps us out quite a bit. So check that out. We appreciate it. All right, let's get into it, man. Let's go into some initial thoughts.
I literally couldn't even speak after this episode when it first finished and before the end credit scene. I was just like, no, what? I mean, dude, my emotions, it was a roller coaster to say the least. And Tom Hiddleston, he told us, he said episode 4 and on is going to be a wild ride. Buckle up. So the episode was insane.
Completely agree. I don't think it's crazy to say. I think this is the best Marvel television that we've gotten so far. Maybe it's a little early to say show as a whole, but episode, by far, best Marvel television. It has everything that you wanted, and I think I messaged you earlier. We were talking in the day about it, and I was like, they were just very fearless with this episode, with the story writing, and that's what I love. Not to get political, but it reminded me of The Last Jedi a little bit. A couple of things inside this episode, but yeah, why don't we get right into things? This episode also reaffirms that our last episode, episode 3, was not a filler. I mean, a lot of these emotional moments that we get and just like how the story continues to build would not pay off as much if we didn't get to spend some time to build a relationship with Loki and Sylvie. Would you agree with that?
Oh yeah, 100%, definitely. I mean, we got to see them, get their bond going on in episode 3, and that was super important for this whole episode 4. Definitely, it was like you said, it created a lot more emotion in this episode for sure.
Totally. So from the very beginning, we get this scene where we see a young Sylvie, and she was taken away from Asgard by none other than Ravonna. And I mean, I think this was just like a really great reveal here, because it starts to add more context to Ravonna's character, and Sylvie as well, just like the history that they have to see that. And again, we mentioned a little bit last week that just like between Loki and Sylvie, their upbringings were very different. And of course, you had mentioned that she was probably on the run from a very young age for a long time, and so we kind of get that in this episode. Start to see like the origin story a little bit.
Dude, I mean, I did see the trailer for this this episode 4 before, and I did see her as like a young girl, but it was shocking to see how young she actually was when she got taken by the TVA. And I kind of joked about it, I think, maybe last episode. And I said, I think they just took her just because she was a girl. Like, she wasn't supposed to be like a female Loki. And they didn't really touch base on that, but that was kind of like what she said. She was like, I just wasn't supposed to be the way I was, basically, something along those lines. But yeah, it was intense, man. Seeing her take down Renslayer too, clap it up for her. When she was like 9 years old.
Back at Lamentis 1, Loki and Sylvie have this heart-to-heart. I thought this was kind of a really touching scene too, and I don't know, maybe I'm reading too much into it, but a little bit profound because Loki is explaining what makes a Loki is that they're a survivor. You know, people will try to hurt them, and like it can be, life can be difficult. They have their struggles, no doubt about it, but they're a survivor. And I just think it was very deep because they're sitting in the middle of an apocalypse here, and it like their chances of surviving this seem very, very slim. They kind of like ran out of all possible options up until this moment. That was really interesting. Did you have any thoughts?
Yeah, like you said, I mean, it was very interesting. Seeing them and hearing like his new side of what he thinks Loki is, and what she was talking about was she was like asked him, right, she was like, so like, do you really think it's our just our job to lose? And he was like, no, like we survive, like that's like how we live all the time, like, and he brings up like different occasions that happen. So yeah, man, it was tense, it was tense.
For sure. And then Mobius ends up saving the day kind of and pulling them out through the portal. They go
Mhm.
back to the TVA. Well, both of them end up getting imprisoned, but it was like special circumstances for Loki, right? Because he kind of gets put into like this weird loop situation
Lady
with
Sif.
with Lady Sif, yes. And so she's kind of like going through this speech over and over and also like punching him. And it's just like on this loop. Anything noteworthy to share?
Honestly, it's been so long since I've seen her, and in this scene, I'm assuming this is probably from around Thor 1, the first Thor, just like by how she's dressed and kind of the context of everything going on. It probably was around Thor 1 before it, maybe even, just because after Thor 1, Loki disappears. So I'm assuming it was just before Thor 1, but um, yeah, it was pretty funny, dude. Seeing her hair actually right now, how it's all cut off. That
Yeah.
that's pretty funny to look at. But yeah, it was crazy, man. And she was stuck on a loop, and no matter what he did or said, like he was always gonna get punched and kicked, and it was got gruesome after a while. I felt bad for Loki. I was like, come on, man. Like Mobius is he's using some very diverse tactics of torturing this guy right now. So
Yeah, I really felt for Loki too when he, admitted that he hasn't been the greatest guy. And I feel like we've seen him own up to his mistakes a couple times in the series. And more, I'm convinced that he's telling the truth and being just completely open and honest too. But he also says to her that he's legitimately afraid of ending up alone. And she tells him that he's always going to be alone. And she spared him by not punching him again, but it was like that was kind of like an emotional, you
just
know,
dagger
punch.
to the heart.
Yeah. So, definitely struck a chord. Um, well,
Well, there's one thing that
yeah.
I was gonna ask you too, real quick about that, with him being alone and stuff. Did you notice everything that was going on with like I know I've been doing it, and I know the people that came out and made the show said no, that's not true, but I'm gonna ship them anyways. Lady Loki and Loki, or Sylvie and Loki, how they created that Nexus event was them connecting and bonding, and him like even feeling like love for her. Maybe that's not reciprocated, and maybe that's why there's not really a relationship there. But that was really interesting. He, like seeing how he was like, I'm going to be alone, but he found this other person that he actually really likes now, and it was kind of touching on that a little bit too. I don't know. What do you think about that whole situation with like the Nexus event and how he might feel towards Sylvie?
Well, I think I said from last episode that there's definitely like a spark there between them.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, I'm okay with that. I thought it was good. I enjoyed it. I think it just like continues to add more to his character too, and just kind of like adds more depth to his character. Also, what's interesting too is that having both of them be variants. I mean, I've heard a lot of people say that it's just basically weird because he's falling in love with a version of himself, right?
Yeah.
Um, the counter to that is that we're seeing a different side of himself with Sylvie, right? And so even though they're not quite 100% the same, we're still um she's adding to what we know as the Loki character too,
Hmm.
from her story and from her experiences, and that just keeps building and building, as we'll see towards the end of the episode and like our mid credit scene. So
Yeah.
yeah, we'll talk a little bit more about that. Okay, so Mobius decides that he's gonna pull Loki back, and they're talking. Loki ends up telling him that they're all variants there at the TVA, which we found out in last week's episode, and he kind of brushes it off a little bit, and he throws him away for a little while. He goes off to investigate. He ends up taking Ravona's temp pad to investigate and finding out that she did in fact do something with, most likely pruned, that one girl. What's her name?
C20.
C20. Yes, thank you. Um, and he sees her be basically pretty sketchy with her reaction to what C20 is talking about, because C20 remembers her memories because she was under this enchantment from Sylvie. And so that definitely just like reaffirms that Loki was telling the truth. And so Mobius is like, I got to do something about this. Well, someone else who was also under enchantment was Hunter B15, and she ended up doing some investigation with Sylvie, bringing her to one of the apocalypses in order to learn more. And that was a really interesting scene, emotional scene, because she was having a tough time believing that it was real, but she had Sylvie like use her powers again to see her past life, her real life, in the sacred timeline, or just the real timeline, whatever. And she said that she saw herself happy, which she definitely doesn't come across. Her character doesn't come across as a happy person, and so she was getting emotional and sad. And I thought that was a pretty great scene too, to see, and adding more to her character as well. Did you have any thoughts on these points so far?
It's the same thing you're saying. It was like honestly really that was really an emotional scene to see B15 standing there with Sylvie at Rock's cart, and she's crying in the rain. So I don't know. I got to think of some sort of metaphor for why that was the case, and they showed that. But honestly, it was super sad. It was a little
Yeah,
depressing, man. But I kind of got the hint. I might have said it last episode too that we did this, where um, she got enchanted, and so when she came out of it, she like sighs a couple of times from episode 2, right? And so then you kind of see like her like clicking, and even when in the beginning of the episode when they're trying to find the Loki, she seems like actually like really concerned about it, like she like kind of needs to find out if what she saw was true. And she even asks about Hunter C20 that they reset or whatever they did to her. But I honestly, it was good to see her, man, because like you said, she was not the happiest camper, and seeing that like change of her character, from being so mean to now like wanting to help and being a little bit nicer and more like emotional about things, it was cool.
yeah. And speaking of emotional scenes, we get one of, if not the biggest, basically right after this. And I know we're going to be diving into this quite a bit, because I think it struck a chord with you, and it struck a chord with me, as I'm sure the rest of the audience. Um, Mobius finds Loki. He's like, okay, I believe you. You were telling the truth. I just found out. What are we going to do about it? They go through the portal, going back to the TVA through like a hallway, and they're met with some Minutemen and Ravona. She's like onto him. She knew that that something was off with their conversation. Found out that he took her temp pad and everything. In their previous conversation, she asked
Mhm.
him where he would want to go, right?
Yeah,
Anywhere in the world. You can kind of just like feel the tension starting to build, like something's going to happen because they're all kind of staying quiet, but you know that they're about to like make a move because Mobius is kind of trying to play it cool so they can like slide by, but it's not working. The last thing that he ends up saying is, where I would want to go is I would want to go back to where I'm from, to the timeline I'm from, and to, enjoy his life that he had and um, the jet ski, right?
I was gonna say even mentions a jet ski.
Yeah. And one of the Minutemen like ends up taking him out.
Oh man, that's emotional. Don't show me that. I'm still
Dude,
still tearing up about it, man.
it was crazy.
That's when my mind exploded. That scene right there.
And Loki's reaction too.
Oh, I know, right? Yeah, he doesn't cry, but he definitely gets like super teary eyed and like
Yeah,
dude, he's because honestly, like you said, when he sees him, Mobius walks in and he's like, "Oh, now I have to trust the word of two Lokis," and then Loki says, "How about trusting the word of a friend?" Because they've grown to be friends throughout this, and so like
right.
they just nailed in this friendship thing that's happening with them, and then see you later, Mobius, and that was like,
Yeah.
oh no! I screamed, I cried, I was in a glass case of emotion for about 15 minutes.
And some people might like even argue that they weren't like real friends. But to be fair, Loki doesn't even know how to really do a friendship. And this
Yeah,
is definitely the closest thing that he got. And he's definitely kind of like working on that whole process of building relationships, right?
yeah.
Ones where there can be like a mutual trust.
Hmm.
And yeah, again, him him getting emotional here was totally valid because also the last thing that Mobius said to him, I think, what was like along the lines of he could be anything that he wanted. He could even be someone good. And he's like, I don't know if anyone's ever told you otherwise, but that's the truth.
Yeah,
And I thought that was really great.
yeah. It was a callback to the first episode when he tells Loki that that's his only
Oh,
kryptonite.
okay.
So he's like, if anyone
Yeah,
told you differently, like, sorry,
right.
like, sorry, man. You know, it was dude, I'm tearing up right now. It was terrible, man.
He finally had someone that like, well, besides his mom maybe and maybe even his dad, like he had someone that like really believed in him.
Yeah,
So, and again, all the props to Owen Wilson for just like really being great. I mean, I feel like a lot of us were kind of just like, that could be fun, that could be funny.
hmm,
Don't know if we need it, but I think he's exactly what the MCU needed, a character like him.
yeah,
Uh, just like
definitely.
so unique and acts the part so perfectly. And then again, we talk about it all the time, but like their dynamics like really well done on screen with Tom Hiddleston and Owen Wilson. Hard to move on from there because there's a lot to unpack.
Yeah,
But both Loki and Sylvie are finally taken to the timekeepers. This is where things get really great and just really interesting. I mean, this speculation, where does it end, right?
yeah. Seriously, right? Listen, okay. My feelings for Ravonna are I don't like her, and I'll just leave it at that. Okay, she is like probably the meanest person ever, and she definitely. I mean, we'll get into it a little bit later, but before that, she gets them actually to the room. You see Sylvie, and she just like wants to know what she did wrong. So she asks Ravonna. She's like, "Do you remember me?" And she's like, "Yeah." And she's like, "Do you remember why you took me?" And she's like, "I can't remember." And she kind of smirks and like laughs at it, like, "I'm not going to give you the satisfaction of like."
Oh, did she laugh?
She doesn't laugh, but she kind of smirks at it. She kind of
Oh,
smiles, like
I
she
guess
knows
I
that
didn't
she's
catch that. I didn't catch that smirk.
okay. Yeah, she's like just putting that dagger and slowly into Sylvie, and I was
Yeah.
just like, like I hate you. Ramona, I can't stand you right now. You killed Mobius. Oh my gosh. So, but that was really emotional too. I mean, I just felt bad because, dude, she's full bore bad, but she's not even the big bad. I don't think so, at least. So we can get into that later. But they get there, and the timekeepers are kind of like trying to figure out why they're doing this, whatever. Um, and then they wanna kill him. But
Yeah.
lo and behold, we still got one in the chamber. We got B-15, and she comes in and she helps them not time loop and takes off their collars, and says the famous line, for all time, always, and throws her the sword, and off we go, man. That was she gets beat up pretty quickly, unfortunately, but
Yeah, that was a little bit anticlimactic how fast she got like knocked out.
good news is she's not dead though. We didn't see her die, so she's
Yeah,
still
that's
around.
true. So maybe we'll see her helping Sylvie later on. But I mean, I thought this choreography was really well done, this fight scene, and I can't speak highly enough of the musical score. I mean, just like the suspense and everything just starts to build really well and just play really well. I'm just really looking forward to rewatching the episode, honestly, especially for this ending. Sylvie and Loki, they're I feel like the Minutemen don't even have a chance against them. I
No.
mean, they're just really kicking butt, and they ended up taking out all the Minutemen. Sylvie knocks out Ravonna, and then Sylvie ends up throwing her blade at like the timekeeper at the very top and taking off his head, which was a crazy scene. And then you see his head come down, and he's a android. He actually really looked a lot like Dead Vision in WandaVision. Yeah, so they find out that these timekeepers in this in this area at least are just like fake androids there. So I mean, we'll get into more speculation on that in just a minute. Kind of talking a little bit about where are they actually or who are they actually, but very interesting, especially because you notice when they talked, which they didn't talk a whole lot, but they had like some like robotic like voices and like mannerisms and stuff. So that was interesting. So they're just like confused, right? And Loki starts to tell her that it's going to be okay and that they're going to be able to figure all of this out. And she's like, "Why?" And you really get the sense that he's going to put it all out there. And I was kind of on the edge of my seat, being like, "Oh man, is he about to get like super cheesy, or is whatever line he's about to say, is it gonna land? I want it to land right." um,
He starts talking about love as a blade again.
yeah, right, right. But before he can get it out, he gets taken out,
Oh no,
just like Mobius.
dude.
Ravonna gets back up and prunes him. It was at this moment, dude. Again, I go back to Last Jedi, even though some people are going to get upset. It's that subverting the expectations, right? The thing is like with shows like you can either play it so safe, or you can take some risks and hope that they can pay off, or you can kind of have a balance. And I feel like we're getting episodes where they're having that balance. And I think they took some risks here with um taking out Mobius and now taking out Loki. Of course, we know that Loki's not actually gone. We'll talk about that in our mid-credit scene, but took some big risks here. And honestly, I would have been completely fine if Loki was 100% gone. And
I think
that
this is like the
and
fifth time we've seen him die too on screen.
because yeah, because I really think that would have been a risk for them to be like, you know what? let's see if Sylvie and her character can just like carry the rest of this show.
Hmm.
And I think, it'd be like a really gutsy move. Um, of course, it's not exactly what goes on, but nevertheless, took some risks here with the episode. And I really liked it. I thought it was really great. But yeah, give me your thoughts, man.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I watching that last scene when he gets taken out, man. I knew it. I knew it. I was saying it before it happened. I was like, dude, don't turn your back. Like, don't do that right now. Like, stop. And I was like yelling at you. I was like, turn around, bro. Like, turn around. Don't turn your back. And all of a sudden you see it. He's about to like, I'm assuming tell Sylvie like that he has feelings for her, and like that's what caused that Nexus event to go straight up, that you see. But dude, yeah, I mean, when I watched a video today on YouTube about the reactions, and I watched the reactions from people that watched Mobius die, and then I watched those same people's reactions when they watched Loki die, and I gotta say, Mobius got way more love than Loki. It was really strange. A lot of people like broke down when they saw Mobius die, and maybe it was because they already saw Mobius die that when Loki died, they were already emotionally drained and they just couldn't take it anymore. I don't know, but crazy scene, man. And I don't know if you want to touch on it. I ask this every single time, man. Who's behind the TVA? Do you have any theories about that, Dom? Or
I'm still thinking that it could definitely be King the Conqueror. So, and have that tie into Quantumania, Ant-Man,
definitely,
Quantumania.
yeah. I mean, that's like there's two sides of. I mean, there's obviously a lot more sides to the aisle, but in my opinion, there's two really strong sides to the aisle. It's either Kang or people think it might be another Loki.
Oh,
There's a
right,
lot of
right.
there's a lot of evidence for Kang right now, but with I mean, just Renslayer. We know that they were lovers or whatever, and then we also know that Kang's coming in Ant Man. Those are probably the two biggest things that we have to think it's Kang. But for me personally, I would love for it to be like the head honcho Loki that like went through time, like took over like the timekeepers, like the TVA, and he's been running the show. And there's a lot to think that it actually might be him. Going back to episode 1, and we talked about it, and I said like that first scene in the jail cell is probably going to be like a huge determinant of like where they're going to take this show, which it was Loki saying, something along the lines of like it's an illusion conjured by the weak, to instill fear, something like that.
Right.
And by the end of that episode, he's like, "That's what I do. Like that's how I know. Like I'm like a weak person that needs to use illusion to like make people scared of me." And seeing him say that about himself and hearing him say that about the TVA really makes me think like, okay, like this is actually like a Loki, and he's putting on this whole show just to like throw everyone off. And we also saw in WandaVision, we saw red herrings, right? We saw the Quicksilver show up, right? And we saw,
Well,
well, so that was the thing, right? There was like misleading and stuff about
hmm
Mephisto, right? And Agatha, and she's like really, her story is really attached to Mephisto as well. So I'm thinking that Ravonna could just honestly be a red herring and just to kind of throw everyone off, so that when they show that it is Loki, everyone's gonna be like, "Oh my gosh, like no way." So I don't know.
yeah,
The show's called Loki. I don't know, man. I don't know. I'm leaning towards Loki. I'm putting it in.
that makes a lot of sense. That makes a lot of sense for sure.
I'm doing it, man.
Yeah, I think that would be really good and interesting too. So Sylvie ends up sparing Ravona's life, right? Because she says, you're going to actually give me all the answers that I need and help me figure this out. That's how the episode ends. But we do have this mid-credit scene, and
Okay.
Loki ends up waking up, and he's wondering where he is. He's like, am I dead? He hears a voice say, not yet, but you will be if you don't come with us. And
Interesting.
standing above him, we get these four different Loki variants. And break down this for me just a little bit.
Okay, yeah. Well, this is really short. The guy on the far right is Richard E. Grant. We finally get to see him. He's like the classic comic book Loki. You
Yeah.
got Kid Loki in the middle, and he's holding Gator Loki.
Kid
And
Loki is like a little call for Young Avengers too.
yeah, that's what I've been like hearing a lot about too. So like, I'm excited to see if this kid shows up anywhere else where they're filming. That'll be interesting. We got Gator Loki, and then everybody on the left is like, who's this guy? And a lot of people think that it's someone named Boastful Loki. And I don't know too much about him, but yeah, he's got his own hammer, and it'll be interesting to see how they all get along.
Yeah.
You know, it's a lot of Lokis for one boat, so we'll see. But obviously, they're in New York. You can see on the right side that that's the Avengers Tower piece of it, and that's going to lead straight into President Loki. So we'll see how that turns out. But it's really interesting to me that they're like, you can't stay here for much longer, or else you are going to die. So I'm curious to be like, okay, like where is this exactly, and what's going to come after him? So maybe honestly, it's President Loki, and he just wants to kill all the other Lokis that show up there. That could be the case, honestly. So maybe they're going to try to save him from President Loki and keep him away. And that guy's just insane because he's been there for so long. I don't know. But yeah, it was pretty crazy. This, I don't know, man. See, it gives me good feelings because I think that it's going to lead into Mobius still being alive. But Mobius isn't Loki, and Mobius doesn't have a lot of powers, man. Like, I don't know if this is like a place that was created by
Yeah.
Loki's, you know? So it would be, I don't want to say it. I don't want to say it, but it would be way better if they just left Mobius dead.
Yeah.
Just, you know,
100%. 100%.
yeah, but we'll have to see. I mean, this leaves the door open. I don't know. What do you think, man? Do you think Mobius is still out there?
I'm worried that he is, and again, we both love Mobius and Owen Wilson.
Best character of the show.
Yeah, I mean he's stolen the show with like in so many of his scenes. He steals the show. He's right up there with Loki. But yeah, I don't want to see another incident with problems that I had with WandaVision where we take these risks or we make these sacrifices and then there's absolutely no payoff because we can get Vision back in some capacity and Wanda can get her kids back completely.
Yeah.
And it doesn't stick the landing. You know what I mean? Like Mobius needs to be gone. This would have been a perfect episode if Loki was completely gone, in my opinion.
Oh man, that's harsh, bro.
No, and it's nothing again, it's nothing against him. It's just like you don't have to like subvert expectations all the time or take risks all the time. But I think that they have something really solid with this show, and it's not just being carried on the back of Tom Hiddleston. Like all of the characters do a really great job, and I do think that Sylvie could have carried the rest of the show, the last two episodes on her own, and and then we could see how that could tie into the rest of Phase 4 and some of our other movies going forward. I think that would have been better.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I think that I'll probably still appreciate what they're going for here. And back to some of your thoughts, I've been hearing some speculation on, is this just like a specific situation for Loki? Maybe it depends on um like the person being pruned, like do they get to go like to like a certain place? Hard to say. I think we'll probably find out next episode. But one thing that I did want to mention, I'm really glad that we brought out that Easter egg with the Avengers Tower. And so we know that it's New York. Well, what New York or which New York is it, right?
Right.
I've been hearing this theory about that this could possibly be a world called Limbo, and the name really speaks for itself, right? And so they could be kind of stuck on this planet, and that has like a lot of comic book references to that tie into some of Loki's like backstory and stuff. So that could be interesting. But yeah, we'll have to see. I actually think that it's most likely something a little more simple than that. But we'll see.
Who knows? I mean, so I even heard some people be like, "Oh, it's Battle World, right?" Like they got sent to
Mm,
Battle World, and I'm like, "Oh,
I
why
don't know
would you
about
have to
that.
be in
I don't know
Battle
about
World?"
that.
Yeah, like what? So, but limbo, I like that. I was actually gonna say, dude, maybe I was gonna use the word limbo, and I haven't even heard of that theory. But yeah, I mean, maybe he'll be stuck there in limbo for like the next episode, full episode, and we'll get to see a lot more Sylvie take the reins back in the TVA and stuff. And dude, I don't know what's gonna happen there. There's a lot of TVA agents they need to turn to realize that they're all variants. But dude, I don't
Yeah.
know, man. It's gonna be
I mean,
insane.
it's getting crazy, and so we'll hit our final thoughts right now, and then we'll get out of here. But I mean, I told you last week in episode 3 review that my theory was that Sylvie ends up dying, and then that has a profound effect on Loki. Well, when I see Loki get pruned, I was like, wow, that I was not expecting that, and I actually kind of like that even more than my original theory. Um, and so I don't know, maybe something will still happen there. Um, because do you think that Tom Hiddleston is going to keep being Loki for many more years and like many more films and whatnot?
Dude, I can't even. He's been in so many. People get tired of it. If he wasn't sick of it by now, I mean, what he started doing it, he's been doing it for 10 years. So it's hard to say because bringing up the point that you thought that Lady Loki was going to die or Sylvie, I think I even said to you, I was like, oh man, I was leaning the other way. Like, I mean, I love Tom Hiddleston, and it would just suck to see him not in any movies just because I love him so much as Loki. He's so good. He's such a good actor, but I don't know. I feel like since they killed Loki already and he's gonna come back, I'm super worried now that they're gonna flip it and now it's gonna be Sylvie that dies in the end, like you said, because we've already seen Tom die, Loki, and now we're. I don't know, man. I don't know. I don't know. That's how I feel after watching this episode. Like I was just like, I don't know anymore. I was like, I have all the cards like are on the table at this point. They could do whatever
Yeah.
they want. So
I really feel like this the point where we're at here with Marvel and everything, they're trying to push forward the next like generation of heroes.
yeah, see, that's what like I was kind of worried about, and I kind of was feeling that they were going to do is pass the torch essentially to Sylvie to be this like new Loki, and she's gonna show up in Thor: Love and Thunder, and with like it's gonna be like all female cast pretty much except for Thor and some of the other guys. So I could see that happening totally 100%. Um, but again, I mean, like a good death in any movie or series is always just fantastic. I love to watch that personally, just because it puts a lot more stakes into next movies. It raises the stakes and it makes it way more intense, and you really don't know what's going to happen. So I'm just torn, man. We'll see. We'll see what happens.
Totally looking forward to it. I think it's going to end up being really good. And I mean, this felt like a conclusion to the series or like a good season finale. So it only has to go up from here.
Yeah, yeah.
But
That's what Tom Hiddleston said. He's like, it only gets crazier
yeah,
after the fourth episode. Which I'm like, okay, how can it get crazier? What else is gonna happen? Like, who's gonna die now? So I don't know, man. Like straight up, after I watched, I couldn't think for like 20 minutes after I watched this episode. I was just like flabbergasted is the only word I could say. That's it. So yeah, it was a good time. It's probably the best thing I've seen from Marvel in years too. I want to see more. I can't help it. I can't wait a week, man. I can't do it.
well, I mean, unfortunately, we're going to have to. But yeah, I'm here for it. I think it's been a great review, bro.
Yeah,
So
definitely.
thanks a lot for being here, helping me break things down, helping us go over some of these Easter eggs that hopefully our audience will appreciate. And, speaking of our audience, you guys throw out any Easter eggs that we may have missed or theories that you guys have. We want to hear about them. And again, subscribe to the channel if you're not already. Check us out on the podcast feed, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, all those platforms out there. We'd appreciate it. But we'll be back next week with more Loki reviews, talking episode 5, giving our spoiler review on that and our breakdown. And I'm looking forward to it. So thanks again, Jake.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, man. I really appreciate it. It's always fun. Always fun.
Absolutely. All right. We will see you guys later.